I think we have a lot of work to do because this is a strong paradigm. Social media alone is still part of that distracting, right, infrastructure and technology that that is continuing to feed our desire, our pain body's desire to not look, just go look over there, do something over there, look outside, don't look in here. It's too uncomfortable. So I think there's a lot of work, but the opportunity is growing.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. In this week's episode, entitled Repressed Emotions and Physical Pain, I spoke with Antonia G about the relationship between emotions and physical pain. Antonia spent 20 years getting university degrees and trying to save the world in careers such as international development and community health. Then in 2006, she experienced a dramatic, spontaneous shift in realities that changed everything she knew of the world and herself. For the next 16 years, she experienced an explosion of energy, eventually understanding she was in an accelerated awakening. She has spent nearly every day since then releasing emotional, physical, and energetic pain and letting go of what she thought defined a worthy life. As the suffering released, she accessed a higher truth about the purpose of pain, in that it feeds our evolution, that it teaches us how to love, but only if we see it. I'm sure you're going to really enjoy this episode. Antonia G, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lee. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really great to have you on the show. So, Antonia, to kick things off, could you perhaps share with the audience your journey and how you came to work releasing emotional, physical, and energetic pain?
Well, I started it myself. There was, it's kind of a strange process that happened way back in 2006, is that my own body started to experience almost this, it was a spontaneous releasing of trauma. I never heard of anything such thing before. I didn't work in alternative. I mean, I had my naturopath and my yoga class, but I worked in mainstream healthcare and international development at the time. And suddenly my own body started to release trauma. And it kept doing it for years, and it was extremely uncomfortable. So when it started to happen, within a year and a half, I moved from working like in community health and international development to suddenly working one-on-one. I went back to school, got a graduate degree in counseling psychology, started working one-on-one with people, was led into Ayurveda, started working one-on-one in that alternative healing path. And moved my attentions from the broader world to the individual body, and specifically how we host and store emotional pain in our physical bodies. And what I recognize is in my own releasing of this trauma, my reality just shifted and changed. My view of things changed. My perspective of the world and my framework for living changed. I felt safer. I felt more expanded. I felt more hopeful. I felt more compassionate. I felt more connected. And so I started to work with people individually on trying to direct their focus to their own bodies versus where our mind loves to go, which is to focus on everybody else, right? But how do we move and create our change within our own bodies, specifically at emotional and the subtle energy body at those levels?
So just so that I understand correctly, so when you spoke about naturopathy and yoga, you wasn't a practitioner, you were just going along and going to yoga classes, seeing a naturopath.
Yep, I was on the receiving end at that time, right, which is pretty fringe for my community. I mean, those were I was a bit of an outsider talking about naturopathy and chiropractics and yoga. So I was just receiving. I wasn't participating.
But you was working in the medical field at the time.
More community health. So,
Right.
Human rights and political advocacy, both in Canada and abroad.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, that's interesting, considering what we were speaking about before we started recording, but that's another can of worms.
Yes.
Okay, so you were on that side of things, but you were dipping your toe into the more kind of alternative health
Yep.
space, if you like.
Correct.
And then did you say it was 2016 that you started to have 2006? Okay. So 2006 you started to have these spontaneous releases of emotion.
Emotion and physical healing. It was very strange. I started in Ayurveda, just kind of led to it strangely. And my teacher, of course, she was from India. And when I went and said, "What is happening?" And she said, "Oh, you're Kundalini. I'm having a Kundalini," which I had no idea what that was about. So I had to go research what was going on. But it was that internal healing force within us that starts to release the pain stories, the narratives of fear and shame and rage, etc. Those internal wounds. That internal intelligence gets activated, and people can spend lifetimes trying to activate that. And mine just went off very quickly, all the time. And I went through this rapid shift. Yeah.
So was there, apart from, getting into Ayurveda, was there anything leading up to 2006 or something that happened in 2006 that kind of led to this release?
I'd love to say that there was. I do recall just one moment sitting in my office, sort of sitting up and going, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. Like I could feel something was not quite right. And I never worked with, intuition or having a sense. I, spent years and years and years getting degree after degree after degree at university. So everything came from my mind. So suddenly I was getting an inner sense, an inner click, which scared the bejeebas out of me. I had no idea even what that meant. So it was an inner click that something wasn't quite right. And then everything just started to fall out of that. And after that, I became compelled to meditate and compelled to get out into nature more and compelled to starting to study the more alternative healings. It was more of a compulsion.
So prior to that, you were very much in your head, very much into studying.
Politics. Yep.
Right. Very kind of what we call left brain activity.
Exactly.
Not much going on in the right brain.
None.
And then all of a sudden, 2006, things just, I wouldn't possibly not flipped, but changed.
Yeah, I don't know. Changed, flipped, turned on its head. Felt a bit like, Wizard of Oz. Yeah, it's fascinating and uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. Change often is, right? Change often is uncomfortable.
Precisely. And those things within us that we want to change are the ones most resistant. All that pain wants to stay exactly where it is. It knows what to do in that when it's, from its perspective, this is what I know what to do. This is how I know to take care of us. And so it's resistant to moving through and releasing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like it's in its comfort zone and it doesn't want to move.
Correct. Right. Absolutely. It's kind of holding on for dear life for itself. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the unknown is scary, isn't it? For all of us.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Yeah. For humans in general. Yeah.
So things start happening in 2006. At what point did you think, right, I need to go and study Ayurveda?
They happened almost at the same time, the studying of Ayurveda and going back to and getting a counseling psychology degree. Ayurveda started probably late 2007. And university started, probably 2008, and university started 2009, very rapidly. I walked out of my job literally and went, I'm not supposed to be here. This is not where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be somewhere different. And I actually set a boundary. Like that's one of the first times I set a boundary in my career because my job was really quite toxic. And I decided, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do this for a paycheck. I don't have to be in a place that doesn't feel good. It's not supportive. And so I walked out, I quit. And, within a few months, suddenly everything went click, 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 click. And I was following Ayurveda and working now in counseling psychology.
And how long was your counseling and psychology degree?
I fast-tracked it. I did 18 months.
Right.
Yeah, I think I snuck past the system pretty. I don't know. I think they went, "What happened? You're finished already?" And so I started a private practice shortly after that, blending the two, the Ayurveda and because I was studying Ayurveda for about 3 years and then in university for 18 months. And then the two came in and I started a private practice. And so the two blended quite nicely because we're working with, shifting from somebody who's solely in mind, I now started to work more subtly in the emotional self and the physical self and how we can move into the body to access healing. Yeah. It's a beautiful combination.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, you've got the counseling and psychology, which is the mind. You've got the Ayurveda, which is the body. But then the other thing that you mentioned there also was the energetic side.
Exactly. And Ayurveda is the root of that, of working with the energy body. Even before, traditional Chinese medicine, they were working with marma therapy in Ayurveda, and the nadis, the energy channel, thousands of energy channels in the body. So I started to learn about that in Ayurveda.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like, I was thinking body, mind, but it's actually mind, body, soul, really. You're working at all three levels.
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely. And even we could discuss is soul and energy body is part of that big metaphysical self. And that is also, part of the soul. So the energy body is just varying levels and functions of the subtle body that do different things. So we can have different entry points of creating change at the subtle level, which affects that metaphysical self, which again was something I'd never even considered before this happened.
So in Ayurveda, you said you studied the nadis. Did you study the chakra system as well?
A little bit. It's not my thing. I'm not. There are many more people who are far more familiar, but of course they make physiological sense. These major hormonal centers and energetically, that's where
neurological centers as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, where all the chakras are. You've got the nerve plexuses as well, or plexi.
Precisely.
In exactly the same place.
It's an interesting coincidence. And then energetically, when you can feel then the concentrations of, for example, emotional and energy densities that hang around in these places, throat, heart, solar plexus. When I'm working with clients, we work somatically. We go into the body and we can feel people are holding stuff in the gut or in the heart, or there's stuff stuck in their throat, or their lower belly feels, tight.
Yeah, so it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like in 2006, it was almost like for want of a better phrase, a divine intervention.
Yeah, I mean, I still try not to think that I understand, because I think that's part of the shift. I don't know anything. It's an important place for me to walk into, as my mind doesn't understand. But I think the important message, whether, it was divine, whatever that means, or it was something within me that I had not intellectually through my mind connected to, had activated and said, okay, it's time. We got to go off on another journey. And that internal intelligence took over, started to take up more and more space. So there was something, a part of me that was different and bigger than what my mind had understood I was and what was going on.
Yeah.
Which led me to understand that the mind is actually a very limited part of our reality. It's only our mind telling us that it's so big, right? That, that we believe it's big. But actually our mind, I think, is much, much smaller than we believe it is. And we are very different than what our mind is telling us we are.
Yeah. And also our mind is full of programs as well, right?
Well, yeah, I think the mind is, the way my framework that I've worked with is the mind is connected to programs and wounds we hold in the body. And they kind of chat with each other. So we have this shame down here, and the mind connects to the shame. And then it constructs a framework, a thought processes, a core belief about what's going on in the world in here based on this feeling. And so they're kind of constantly chatting with each other until we get in there and start to sever that conversation by quieting the mind and working with the wound, working with the trauma, working with the program, the imprint.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things that I do on a regular basis with clients, I work with people with persistent or chronic pain. What would you say is the relationship between physical and emotional pain?
Yeah, I think my understanding and what I've experienced in my own body and clients is that physical pain is super, 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 super concentrated emotional pain. So Ayurveda would say, and my experience would say, that we have an emotional event that happens. And if this emotional event is beyond our resources to make sense of and arrive at safety with it, then that emotional event gets stored somewhere in the body, major organs, joints, other places. Now, if that's not resolved, that thing chimes with the mind, and then the mind starts to reinforce that reality, which then can sometimes compound. We can sort of have other emotional experiences attached to it, creating layers and layers and layers.
Mm-hmm.
And so those layers, as they intensify, then become denser and denser and denser, and they create contractions within the physical body. Now, I think we can contract at the level of the DNA, or we can contract at the level of a muscle. We can contract as we get blocked in our organs. So we create denser and denser contractions of emotional experiences, and then that interferes with how the physical body moves and flows.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, one of the things that often people, I guess, question. So let me backtrack a little bit. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that all physical pain is caused by emotions?
Yeah, I'm going to hypothesize yes, because I don't believe in certainties anymore. But yeah, I'm going to say that Ayurveda would say everything's rooted in repressed emotion, and there's maybe a subtle energy root to that. I don't know what that is, that link yet, but I'd say all of it is rooted. Now, I do believe that we inherit emotional imprints.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more and more research on in epigenetics and intergenerational trauma to suggest that we will inherit particular traumas, wounds, imprints, blockages, contractions in our body where things don't flow at very subtle levels or at very physical levels. And we can inherit that. And so it might have nothing to do with anything that happened in our lifetime, but it will get activated or it will manifest somehow in our lifetime to show up as physical discomfort or wounding.
Yeah, there's that great book. I forget the author, but it's called It Didn't Start With You.
Yeah, I forgot the author too. Exactly. Yeah, very popular among my clients.
Yeah. So what I think is interesting, and the reason I asked that part of the question was, someone, let's say they have a car accident, right, and they get their leg trapped, maybe their leg's broken. Someone would look at that and say, well, the reason they're in pain is because they were in a car accident, they broke their leg. It's not because of an emotion. What would your view be on that scenario?
Yeah, I hesitate to walk into places that I really don't know. But if we're going to look at the world in general, many of us have a belief, an understanding, and a feeling that we have intelligence floating at multiple levels. So we have intelligence floating at the cellular level, and we have intelligence floating at the global level. That there is a unity happening, that there's an interconnection. And so that intelligence can get jammed and blocked by pain, because pain is kind of sticky and contracted. And so that intelligence has more difficulty getting in there. So somebody gets into an accident, a car accident, there's a possibility you could understand it as that there is a story, a pain, a fear, a shame, a rage that interferes with how we're moving in the world, how we're moving our body, how we're connected or disconnected, the choices we make, and that manifests then in some type of accident or injury. And that in itself, people I think that people have accidents happen and then recognize later that accident actually taught them this thing that was outside their awareness, their learning framework before. So that would suggest that accidents happen because we have some blockage in our awareness, because we're disconnected somehow. And I don't think all accidents and I don't think all violence is about that, but I think that could be part of a worldview, a framework for understanding why accidents happen. There are no accidents. Many people would say that, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I agree with that concept. I'm still, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer. But obviously I do see pain in people's bodies that when you correct the biomechanical, let's call it, imbalance, the pain goes away. We don't work on emotion. I mean, some might say, well, if you change the body, you might release the emotion by changing the physical body, which it could be true. But let me give you a specific example. So I play tennis. I'm generally injury free. At my age, it's not that rare to get the odd injury here and there, considering most people my age have given up, or at least given up playing at a level where you have to sprint around the court for 2 hours. Sometimes if I don't have anyone, I can't find anyone to play against, I'll go and practice my serve for an hour, and I love practicing my serve. And there's different types of serves you hit. So there's a flat serve, there's a slice serve, and there's a kick serve. With a kick serve, there's a lot of rotation through the elbow, right? If I go and practice my serve for an hour, I just hit flat serves, my elbow's fine. If I go and hit slice serves, my elbow's fine. If I hit a lot of kick serves, my elbow's always sore afterwards. Huh. Now, is it just the biomechanics? Because it is quite a tricky position to get in, especially if you're going to do it a lot of times. Or could it be I'm not hitting my kick serve as well as I would like, and there's the emotion attached to it in my elbow causing the pain? If I'm honest, I think it's the biomechanics of it, but I can't be 100% sure about that. Esther was in her 40s when I met her through a friend. She had really bad breakouts and was very embarrassed about her skin. Her acne was so bad that even applying makeup couldn't conceal it, and she tried many different facials and cleaning routines without success. Esther purchased the first edition of my book, Axe Adult Acne, after chatting with me, and in a very short period of time, she improved her diet, especially reducing sugar and flour intake, and she noticed a great improvement very quickly, which greatly improved her confidence levels. She now uses much less makeup than before because she doesn't need to conceal her acne, and suffice to say, she was very pleased with the progress in a short period of time and looked forward to continued improvements and a further reduction in the frequency and severity of breakouts as she made her way through the book. If you'd like to achieve the same kind of result as Esther, you can now follow a comprehensive step-by-step guide in my brand new book, Eliminating Adult Acne for Good, available now from all major online bookstores and via my website at www.bodycheck.co.uk/books.
Well, I don't know. I mean, my first thought would be that there's something within your body that biomechanically that doesn't work for how your body likes to move, right? And so the injury comes because there's something in you that's disconnected from knowing I shouldn't be moving this way. My body doesn't appreciate moving this way. The tissues don't function this way. In my unique body, somebody else's unique body is going to be just fine with that particular.
It would be quite a strange movement for most people. It's a very unnatural movement.
Yeah. But
then not everyone has elbow pain serving in that way. But
yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't last long, like 24 hours and it's gone. But it's just I just thought it's an interesting example just to examine, really. And just because of the fact that I know that emotions can cause physical pain in the body. I know that from experience. I've been doing injury rehab for 22 years. And I've worked on people, and I haven't even touched their biomechanics or their nutrition or whatever else, but I have released an emotion, and now the pain's gone.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think if I was to nail my flag to the mast right now, I would just say I think there are different things that can cause pain, but emotions is definitely one of them. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm not saying that's 100% right. I'm saying that's just how I feel right now.
if you were to continue to doing that serve and harming your, until the place you got an injury, then I think that we're talking about stored pain. Then we'd be talking about what is pushing you to do something that you know is harming your body, and you're ignoring it, and you're denying that that's causing harm to your body. And in fact, you're going in and choosing to harm your body. There's some emotion, there's something in there that's facilitating that choice. If it were to be taken that far, that's an emotional wound. That's some imprint in there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I just want to get better at playing tennis. That's why I keep doing it. Yeah,
at what expense, though? Right, that would be the expense. Is damaging this worth that? Would be the interesting. And does better mean what? What does better mean?
Yeah, in this instance, I feel like I'm probably conditioning the elbow to be able to take the stress. So this has only been a relatively recent thing. I'm only talking about the last month that I've been really focusing on developing this serve. So I think over time, I will condition so that pain isn't there anymore. It's just once I get used to it. But I'm just using that as an example to compare biomechanical with emotional.
Yeah.
But I definitely agree there's instances where it seems like it's definitely a physical thing, but when you look deeper, it's probably not.
The motivations behind it.
Yeah, I mean, the example, again, I'm probably going to bore my listeners because they've probably heard this story a million times, but 10 years ago, I ruptured 2 lumbar discs in my spine.
Ouch.
And, people would often go, "Oh, how did you do that?" There was no accident. There was no incident. I just woke up one day and, I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. My leg was completely numb, And actually, I've done a whole episode on that. So if people are interested in the answer, go and listen to that episode. But ultimately, the reason why that happened to me, the lesson was that I was getting too busy and I wasn't taking enough time out and resting for myself. That was my lesson. So what my teacher suggests is that there's something called the pain teacher. And when you're in pain, it's often, it is your subconscious trying to tell your conscious mind that there's something you're not aware of that you need to address.
Correct.
So when we're in pain, we need to understand what's my lesson here.
Correct.
Which I think is a very Ayurvedic philosophy, right?
Yeah. Always. Any type of discomfort is an indication that you're not in balance. And so that's that, and that there's something noisy in there that's trying to talk to you. And if you continue to ignore it, it's going to get noisier and noisier. So we want to look at any discomfort as a sign that's out of balance. And what do you need then to bring it back into balance? And a balanced state is one in which things move easily. It's quieter. The mind is quiet. The body's quiet. We're in a state of flow. When we're not in a state of flow, in whatever way, then we're out of balance. We're not listening to ourselves. Something in there needs our attention. We've kind of abandoned it and not wanted to look at it. We need to unabandon those parts of us that are talking to us so that we can bring ourselves back into that state of balance.
Yeah, the sad thing with, I guess, the modern world is that whenever someone's in pain, rather than listen to it and try and understand what it's trying to tell us, the kind of paradigm is, I need to mask that pain. I need to dull that pain. I don't want to listen to it. So whatever the pain teacher's trying to tell them, it's just getting swept under the carpet. And the worst thing, on top of that being a problem, what's adding to that is that, if they're using something like a pharmaceutical, that's actually going to cause another problem, which they're probably going to need another pharmaceutical, which is going to cause another problem. And now they're on that merry-go-round.
Yeah, I think that we are coming out of thousands of years of a bad habit of suppression. And for thousands of years, we needed to suppress to stay alive. I can't be paying attention to my stomach ache. I've got to run. I've got to battle, right? I've got to survive the threat of the next human next to me. I've got to live to the ripe old age of 35. So we've had to suppress all of our terror and our rage in order to survive in so many ways. We've been living in survival reflexes, the fight or flight for so long that we've needed to suppress. Many parts of the planet right now are safer than we've ever been in recorded history, but we do still have a reflex to suppress and deny and avoid our discomfort, to push it down. And we've turned that into an economy. In North America, it's suck it up, be productive, be effective, be efficient. It's a very mind-based, busy, doing, rewarded reality. There is no time to go in and feel your feelings. And so our own economy and our politic continues to encourage suppression and not listening to your body, which keeps these wounds going. And then we keep handing it down through the generations. But I think that there is this lovely current that's rising more quickly than we've ever seen, which is an expanded awareness that goes, I think it's time that we need to look in to what's actually going on in my inner world, my inner reality, and allow myself to see that discomfort, to be with it, to be kind to it, so that it can release from my reality and I can create a whole new reality.
Yeah, and I can see how those in charge of commerce would prefer for that not to happen.
100%. There's a lot of money to be made in people ignoring their pain and their discomfort and believing our paradigms of being super busy is successful and accumulating is successful and doing is rewarded. And so it makes a lot of money for a lot of people for us to keep continuing to believe that particular paradigm. But I think more and more we're moving out of it. I think a lot of people are moving out of it. Those people are not hitting mainstream media, but they're floating in there and they're taking up more and more space of moving out of that paradigm. Yeah. I think we have a lot of work to do because this is a strong paradigm. Social media alone is still part of that distracting, infrastructure and technology that is continuing to feed our desire, our pain body's desire to not look, just go look over there, do something over there, look outside, don't look in here. It's too uncomfortable. So I think there's a lot of work, but the opportunity is growing.
Yeah, I would say I'm one of those that's tried to bring awareness to what we would call reality, and certainly the social media platforms didn't like me attempting to do that, and lots of cancellations and deplatforming occurred a couple of years ago, but that's another can of worms.
Yes. We don't have to go with those worms.
No. So moving on, there are some common stories around pain. Yeah. We can hear them in our own chatter, in our own minds. What are they, and why are they so similar to people in general?
So some of I think some of the overarching pain stories, and I'm a therapist, so I talk primarily what's stored in the emotions, what we're emotionally experiencing, and what eventually lands in the body is abandonment, rejection. Those are the big ones. Mm-hmm. And abandonment and rejection 1,000 years ago was lethal, right? Mm-hmm. It was life-threatening. Yeah. And I still think that we are holding on to a deep terror of being rejected and abandoned, and we don't recognize it. It's so suppressed. It's so buried and so part of the programming of this reality and shared amongst all of us, 99.99999% of us, that we don't even recognize it. It is the norm, how we cope with our terror of rejection and abandonment. And that deep rejection of abandonment, I imagine, shows up physically as we continue to suppress it and suppress it and suppress it as we have for thousands of years. I think that's actually the root of most physical ailments, that concentrated terror. And out of that terror comes shame and rage and jealousy and disgust. They kind of emerge out of that fear of abandonment, of being alone, aloneness, not understood, not being seen, not being heard. Those are all expressions of abandonment and rejection.
Yeah, that makes complete sense when you think about it. If you think back to hunter-gatherer times, as I think you were alluding to, if you're abandoned or rejected, you're on your own. Now you don't have the support of the tribe. If something happens to you, you're a goner.
Absolutely. Yeah. And some populations more than others, right? Like if a woman was abandoned by her husband just a few hundred years ago, and even some places today, right? That was a death sentence. If a child was abandoned by their parents, death sentence.
Yeah.
If you were abandoned by your feudal lord, death sentence.
Yeah,
and I think we carry that down, and then our mind makes stories about abandonment. Today, it makes it extremely threatening and very serious, and something that we will at all costs either try to avoid or deny that we have those feelings even exist.
Yeah. My thought on that in terms of modern day, let's call it modern day, as you said earlier, most places in the world now are as safe as they've ever been. We've also got housing, we've got food, we've got those things at the moment. I think that might change in the near future, but at the moment we have those things, and certainly we've had those for the last few decades. I think it's fair to say. So we do live in a world where if we are physically abandoned, we can still survive. That survival threat isn't there really, right? We can get by. We can go to the store and buy food. Even if you don't have any money, most countries will still make sure you've got a roof over your head. And you could say, even from a spiritual level, that that's enabled us to develop to some degree. But what I kind of see in my own practice, and possibly in life in general, is that when people in this modern day are, let's call it, concerned or frightened of abandonment or rejection, what that can potentially come down to is a lack of love for self. Because if you're comfortable in your own company, the fear of rejection or abandonment is going to be at least much less because you're okay in your own company.
Correct.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it's absolutely perfect, which, really looks into we don't or resist loving ourselves because we have other repressed stories down in there that tell us we're not good enough, we're not lovable enough, people don't see me, I'm not worthy. And so those are all wounds in there that we're not seeing, which means we've abandoned them. We've abandoned ourselves. So love can't get in there to ourselves. We can't love ourselves because these are in here in unseen places. So the work becomes, how do you find your way into seeing all of the stories that are in there and bringing love into them? So you release all of the layers of stories right down into the fear of rejection and abandonment. So it is, what part of me has not yet received my acceptance is the journey.
Yeah.
And there's various ways. So emotional wounds and physical wounds and energetic blockages are the signposts that there's something within me that I've abandoned, that love, acceptance, compassion, consciousness has not yet gotten to, has not yet arrived at, has not yet opened up and released the contracted state of any of those stories. And I think that there's hundreds or thousands of stories depending on, what our path is. So absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And I think that reveals the journey. Us not being able to sit comfortably in our own body is a signpost going, oh, well, there's work I need to do here because something in here is not feeling okay with itself. It's my job to get in there and find it and do the work to locate it and to see it fully and to accept it fully, which is to release the ancient stories of rejection and abandonment.
That's really interesting. One of the things, I guess I've got a question in my own mind. Again, I'm thinking of my own practice working with people. They come to me with pain. Do you see any correlation between the type of emotions that are being held onto and perhaps the location in the physical body where they might be feeling pain?
Sometimes there are patterns, but in general, I think, we're also unique. And so how and where we're going to store our imprints and our suffering is going to be different. There are some general stuff like, from an emotional level, we store a lot of rage in the liver, and we store a lot of fear in the colon and in the kidneys. We store shame in the belly and in the heart. We store a lot of grief in the lungs. But there's also in the joints. People can go into a hip opener in yoga and just the rage can come up, right? I know people who just start to feel uncontrollable rage in a hip opener, or really opening up, the spine. I mean, all sorts of emotions can flood when we start to really get some more flexibility into our spinal cord, for example. Lots of emotions can flood. So there are some general patterns, but I also see that there's just, I can't find the similarities.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the examples you gave there were both what I've discovered from studying traditional Chinese medicine and the chakra system. That fits completely with what you just said. But I also find, as you said, some emotions could just be anywhere. They don't have to follow an exact pattern. I'm actually learning at the moment to do something called emotion code. And even though I'm completely familiar with the chakra system and the traditional Chinese medical system, so I know where emotions should technically, traditionally fit, if you like, but yet they don't.
Not always.
Yeah, they can be anywhere. So yes, I just find it really interesting.
Which leaves it up to the client then to do their sleuthing and find out and to feel and to not assume and to get very quiet with their own body so that its own mystery is revealed, right? So that they can, follow their own logic and their own intelligence.
Yeah. So one thing you've said a lot is about seeing your pain.
Okay.
So what does it mean to see pain?
Awareness. Because pain is an unaware state. That's why I think this planet right now, we don't have to look very far to see how much pain we're in by our behaviors, by how we treat each other and how we feel about ourselves. I do think that we are in a giant delusion of pain. And we don't see it as in pain. Pain doesn't see anything else but itself, right? It's a very unaware about what's going on. If we're in pain, pain says, look at me, look at this pain. Nothing else exists, which is really like states of self-absorption, which we all can be in, right? Narcissism is really just a concentration of pain that says the only thing I have energy and capable of seeing right now is me. That's what pain is about. And so it's unaware of what's going on in its environment with those around it or the interconnectedness of the world. Empathy is absent. And that's a state of not being able to see the pain story. We believe the pain story. We believe the pain is me. So we don't see it. We don't have awareness. When we begin to see the pain and go, you're not truth, you're just rage sitting in my liver, trying to tell me there's something wrong with them and that I'm a victim to them. But now that I see you and I can see the agenda that you have and the story that you need in order to try and survive this world, I can bring a seeing, a deep awareness that your agenda is not truth. It's how pain works. It is pain trying to take care of itself. When we bring that awareness, which is the unabandoning, that seeing is to go, I see you, I get you, you make sense, of course you're there, but actually I don't believe you. I'm going to love the bejesus out of you until that bringing in that seeing, that deep awareness starts to release the contracted state. It's like when a child's in pain and we bring in just pure, I'm here. I see you fully. I accept you fully. That pain dissolves out of the body. They arrive at safety again. We can do that with our own bodies. And we're finding more and more creative ways to get into those tissues, organs, into our coding that says, I see you, I'm here, this is okay, you're accepted. And the contracted state releases with that deep seeing. And we arrive at present moment in a state of intelligence and flow.
Simon suffered acne as a teenager and at the age of 21 began taking the antibiotic erythromycin. The erythromycin didn't work, and as a last resort, he took Accutane for 4 to 5 months. Whilst Simon had some good days on Accutane, he still had breakouts. Simon was constantly anxious whenever the inevitable would happen and his skin would break out. From the age of 23 to 25, Simon went back on erythromycin, and again, the results were disappointing. Simon came to see me at the age of 31 and immediately changed his diet, especially reducing foods that would spike his blood sugar. He introduced some essential supplements, started drinking more water, and reduced his alcohol intake to almost zero. A couple of months in, Simon reported that his skin was as good as it had been in a long time, and he has now experienced the longest spell without breakouts since he was a teenager. So Simon is no longer anxious about experiencing breakouts because he knows he's in control of how his skin looks via his lifestyle choices, which has been very liberating for him. If you would like to achieve the same kind of results as Simon, you can now follow a comprehensive step-by-step guide in my brand new book, Eliminating Adult Acne for Good, available now from all major online bookstores and via my website at www.bodycheck.co.uk/books. Yeah, so seeing in the words that you're using is awareness. So it's not necessarily like a physical seeing. It's an awareness. It's not like a clairvoyance type thing. It's
I can see. No, to see is to acknowledge, right? When we feel seen, when we feel heard, and to feel seen is a safe space. It means I'm going to see you and I'm going to accept everything that's in front of me with love and compassion. I'm going to see you fully.
Yeah. When you were speaking then about pain, and pain only sees itself, it doesn't see what's around it. It's kind of a little bit narcissistic, really, from what you were kind of saying. What I was thinking was that if you switch the word pain to tumor, it would have fit exactly as well.
Yeah, tell me more.
So, well, because tumors are they're looking after themselves, right? They want to survive, they want to live. They don't care about the body that it's in, and they don't care if they kill that body. They just want to survive. And I've had a good friend of mine, Paul Lingdertz, he's done a couple of episodes on the podcast talking about the root cause of cancer. And his view is that the root cause of cancer is trapped emotions in the body, or stress, but stress causes an emotional response, right?
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting when you're talking about what you see pain as.
Yep.
It's almost like, well, cancer is a very similar concept.
I agree. In the book, in my book that I wrote, I have a small chapter in there called Ego as Virus. Now, what I look at is that ego is the pain infrastructure, right? It sees self. And that ego's interest then, that pain infrastructure's only interest is in its own survival. And it will even consider killing the host to keep its stories alive and its worldview alive and asserting its agenda. It will kill the host. It will ask you to do bizarre things just to maintain its fear and shame and rage stories, right? We will self-harm. We will hurt ourselves to maintain our fear, shame, and rage stories. As we know in intimate relationships, we will go into very compromising situations to not experience the feeling of rejection that's in there. Because that pain says that rejection's there, but just don't look at it. We're just going to live this way. We're going to accept this way, but don't look at it. Don't heal it. Just go be in a very compromising relationship, and then we'll be good. But really, we're killing ourselves, right? So virus and tumor, I think we are interchangeable. I think it's the same analogy.
Yeah, it's interesting, again, talking about, we will continue in, your example was of bad relationships. And that goes back to what we were saying earlier, is because that is someone's comfort zone. And to go through the change of maybe, let's say, leaving a relationship is even more scary than the bad situation that they're in. And you could put that same analogy to getting out of pain. The changes that people have to go through to get rid of that pain to their ego is more of a threat than the pain itself.
Absolutely, which is why we need to be in a lot of pain in order to create big change historically as humans, right? We have to be in near-death experiences often in order to decide, okay, I'm going to change my patterns and habits, because there is that pain program within us that says, if you choose to not listen to me, then you're going to die. You're going to die. So just keep drinking that vodka. Just keep shooting up that drug. Just keep that rage in place. Just rage at the world. Just keep, zoning out on internet 26 hours a day, because that's what you need to survive. If you do something different, you're going to die. So change has to be often accompanied by enormous amount of discomfort. I think we have an opportunity now that if we bring awareness in that says, instead of going into that really uncomfortable place, I'm going to get really quiet. I'm going to create space to look at my pain, and I'm going to stop believing it. I'm going to bring awareness to my discomfort, and I'm going to disconnect from the stories that it's telling me and just allow myself to feel it without believing it. Then we start to create real change at the root of the wound.
Yeah. So we've kind of covered my next question, but there might be some extra things that we've not mentioned. So in what ways do we resist our own healing? Is there anything more to add to that? I know we've covered it a little bit anyway.
Yeah, I think that the story is it's scarier, that we're being told by our pain that it's going to be scarier to change than to just stay with the status quo. Yeah. I think we covered it well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's something that I see not so much in clients. I mean, I'm very, very thorough when I take on new clients that, first of all, I get them to fill in questionnaires that take several hours to do. So that weeds out a lot of people that aren't ready, right? Right. But I'm quite thorough, even on the initial consultation. If I think someone's not ready to change, I'll tell them. I'm not going to take people's money if I don't think they're ready to change, right?
Yeah, I agree.
But I see a lot of people in pain, and you can give them all the advice in the world, but they never take it.
Yeah.
And that really goes back to what we've been discussing today. It's like the pain of change is perceived as more painful than the pain they're currently in at the moment. And that often is, a safety mechanism for them.
Yeah, I think it is. And I also think that we all change precisely when we're ready to. And what serves our path. And I have lots and lots of stories I'm unaware of that I still need to get into. So I really honor somebody else's path if they're not ready to go into that story. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not throwing advice at anybody. When you want to, when it's perfect for you, I'm a resource. Jump on board. I'll help you walk through this particular seeing to come into awareness and bring love in this place. But I think we do, I think we serve everybody when we allow people to step into that change, that healing, that awareness, that love, that seeing at their time, when they're ready, whatever that means, whatever's perfect in their flow of consciousness and their realities, histories. Yeah.
Yeah. I just like, as someone from the caregiver archetype, it's quite challenging sometimes to watch someone going through pain, and you think, if you would just take that first step, you'd be amazed at where you could end up, But I also know, that there's the rescuer as well, right? And I don't want to become the rescuer.
Exactly. Which is my pain, So every time I want somebody else to be out of pain, I go in and I find out what in me needs seeing.
Yeah.
What in me is feeling abandoned, that it can't sit in acceptance and trust, that that's supposed to happen. Yeah, for me, it became really, really important to accept that this is a really painful reality. And when I stop resisting that, this is a very painful existence. When we sort of, embrace that, then trying to get all that pain out of there, which is what I spent the first many years of my career doing, is trying to fix it all. But if I came to accept, no, this is a lot of pain. We've been in a lot of pain for many thousands of years. So rushing anything is just my mind's, desperation to get out of this pain, but not really a reflection of I think, a really big project we're on in this reality, which is to heal a lot of pain. If we accept that, we bring in more compassion and empathy into people's pain without rushing it past, its state of readiness.
Yeah, that's great. So one of the things that you suggest is, an important part of letting go of pain, emotional, physical, energetic, and mental is to not believe it. What do you mean by that?
Well, if we understand that we have, there's a lot of things we can understand, but even from the basic knowing, for example, that we've inherited a lot of pain from our ancestors. I inherited a lot of rage from the women's side of my family. A lot of raging ancestors up there. Those women were angry women. And so for me to believe the rage that's sitting, for example, in my liver, in my gallbladder, is for me to then believe and to adapt that reality. My job is to go, that anger is there. It's sitting in my body. My mind wants to believe it. And my job is to create, that mindful place, that aware place, that quiet place, to see the story of anger or rage for what it is. It is a story that may have been around for hundreds of generations, thousands of years. And if I am to let it go, then I've got to stop believing the stories it's trying to tell me about reality, about them, about me, about anything, and get really quiet with it, and just to get still and to start to really bring awareness and love and compassion, the higher energies into it, movement, breath work, whatever it is that we can permeate into that story, to start to loosen it up and say, you're just no longer needed. Your rage is not serving me in this life. It doesn't do me anything. And it's not feeding me a truth. So I think a really important step is to look at, actually, I think almost all pain, all discomfort, all suffering, and to go, I see you're there, but I need to stop believing that you're telling me the truth in order to dissolve you. Because, as I said, I went through years, and I see to my clients, of just having pain there one moment and then it literally gone the next. And with it, my whole framework for life would start to dissolve. Like, my perceptions changed, my core beliefs changed, my behaviors changed. So if it can be there one minute and gone the next, can it be real? I kept questioning that for years. Can it actually be real? Well, it's obviously not truth, because it's there one minute and gone the next. So it's important for me to let go of it, is to stop believing it. And stop believing it, I create some distance between me and that pain story. And there's room then for it to start to move, release, bring in the interventions I need to work on the pain versus suppressing the pain, denying the pain, even, making the pain part of my life, living with the pain, but to really start to release it from my reality.
So when you say don't believe it, obviously there are inherited emotions that you mentioned. I don't know if you believe in absorbed emotions as well. So absorbing emotions from people that you're around.
Sure.
But then there's your own emotions that developed within you. Do you include even the emotions that developed within you? Would you say to not believe those as well?
Yeah, I don't believe anything. Yeah, for me, my particular paradigm is, if it's not love, then it's a story. It's got to go.
Right.
Unless I'm being chased by something or about to be hit by something, and I need to listen to the fear that says run to keep this vessel safe. Unless I really need that adrenaline to keep this body from being harmed, then anything else that's stewing in there, no. Because one of the questions I will always ask myself is, would that person next to me feel exactly the same way? And if there's somebody next to me or across the planet from me who would feel different, then I go, this is a story then. This is a story that's stored in this body that's telling this mind to believe this thing. So how about I get rid of it, especially if it's an uncomfortable story that's leading to judgment, that's leading to shaming, that's leading to doubt. So my job is to release it. And as I release it, then I create more freedom. As I release all of these stories, then the limited reality that pain constructs starts to open up, and we have more of a limitless reality, because only pain is this small. When we release stories, no matter what they are, no matter how much we thought they were real, when we release them, suddenly we're in a more limitless space. Potential explodes.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. When you say nothing is really happening, what do you mean?
Well, we're in a lot of pain. And if I'm saying that actually I don't believe that pain is actually real, well, we get really quiet then, and all that pain just we stop listening to it, we stop believing it. Then we recognize there's really nothing actually happening. It's only your pain story bouncing off my pain story. I think that's this reality, mostly what we created right now. Is your pain story has decided to bounce off mine if we're in pain. And then we go forth and keep creating out of that. But if we get quiet and stop acting out of our pain, we recognize that we're engaging in dramas that I've created. If I created them, I can uncreate them, which means they're probably not really real.
So when you're working with clients, how do you get them to first see their emotions, and then what do you get them to do once they've acknowledged that it's there?
So I work on multiple levels. When it's safe enough for us to go, you see, that might be a story. That might not be serving you. That might be really your truth. And we can go into the body, and we might discover where it's sitting in the body. And I find a way to take my client in with energy of a consciousness, with awareness, and see the story in the body. And we activate the energy, which literally starts to release the story. I can feel the body literally the kind of dissolves from the body, and it lets go. So it's sort of an energetic and emotional. And often there's a lot of emotions that come out of that. They discharge emotions, and then there's a physical release that comes up, detoxing.
So when you're working with a client, do you teach the client how to find out where the emotion is, or do you find it?
I like to lead and follow where they're tuned into, and then I follow them. And the more that I ask them to go into their bodies and tune in and to feel, then the more sort of interoception, more connection to their own body they have, and they're able to connect physically versus mentally to the story and start to work with it on their own. It's not easy. This is really difficult work, but I do think that it leads to the root of everything. Yeah.
So when you're guiding them, are you just literally using words to guide them to find where the emotions are?
Yeah, all of it is. We'll talk about the stories and what's going on in their life, maybe, and then we'll drill down into the emotions. And after many sessions, then we go down into the body where it's hosting it, and then we start to work energetically when they start to feel things moving in their body, and then they start to see perceptions change. So it's sort of a drilling down into subtler and subtler and subtler layers of the body, of the being.
Right. And do they normally, to be able to do that, do they have to be in a particular state to be able to do like a meditative state or anything like that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, as soon as we engage in conversation, I connect to them. And already, in that connection, I'm working with them. I'm working with them on multiple levels through conversation. But also, we come in tune with each other and we work energetically. Yep.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So what would perhaps be let's say your top 3 tips for someone who perhaps has suffered from pain for a long time, and they've tried all the conventional approaches and nothing seems to have happened long term, and they're kind of desperate to get out of pain? What would be your top 3 tips for someone like that?
Oh, this is a scary request, because there's so many of us who are desperate for that change. And sometimes it can take a long time to find our way in. But But I think the number one is we got to get quiet. We got to meditate, because our minds are so connected and so invested in our pain and rationalizing and making stories about it and that pain reality, that to get quiet, we get underneath it and we start to access the wisdoms underneath it. So I always encourage everybody to get quiet as a part of the journey.
Yeah.
That quiet then should hopefully, the quieter you are and the more you start working on that intelligence versus this intelligence, we crack that open more and more, then we're able to access more at an intuitive level the people and things we need to bring in to increase that seeing and that connection to our wounds. We're able to bring in the energies, the frequencies of change, how that part of us needs to experience being seen and loved and feel safe. And safety is key, because we don't change without feeling safe. The body's in fight or flight. Change is much, 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 much more difficult in fight or flight. So bringing in safety. And then number 3 is, I don't know. Those are the 3, I guess, right there. And safety.
Yeah.
I say we got to move. We have to move in order to keep. movement is so fundamental in any change. However you're capable of doing it, we've got to keep this body moving, keep breath moving, keep blood flowing, keep intelligence going, and continue to detox. I think is fundamental on that path as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And where can people find you online? And also your book?
So my website is www.tribetocollective.com. One word, tribetocollective.com. My book called Dismantling the Third Dimension, which is about working with this pain reality from sort of blending a kind of a metaphysical, but with a psychotherapeutic approach about what changes, especially when we're working with the subtle bodies, and looking at it from a global framework. And you can access the book, and you can access me and my services and retreats coming up online. Yeah.
Also your website and your book. Any other way you'd like people to contact you, or is that it?
That's the best. No, that's central. It's easy. You can find everything there. And you can find the book on Amazon. It's easy enough as well.
Great. I think I might buy it, actually. Sounds really good.
Then get back to me and we'll chat again.
Yeah. Definitely. That'd be great. Antonia, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed our conversation today.
It's been lovely, Lee. I really appreciate a chance to chat at this level with people. I think it's an important conversation to take it up, if that's what you call it, or take it out, out of the consistent framework and keep going out of this kind of really contracted life that we're living in. Especially right now, it feels kind of crunchy. And to move out and start to look at it a bit. Yeah,
outside of the box, I think is the term, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Really awesome.
So that's all from Antonia and me for this week. But don't forget, you can join me same time, same place next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.